The first person Donald Trump ever appointed to be his national security advisor was this guy, General Mike Flynn. Flynn lasted in that position for all of 24 days before he was indicted for lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russian officials and had to resign. Trump then cycled through several other national security advisors. There was H.R. McMaster, who went on to call Trump's presidency an exercise in competitive sycophancy. There was John Bolton, who went on to call Trump unfit to serve as president. Trump's final first-term national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, might have stayed in the fold had he not committed the cardinal sin of admitting that Biden won the 2020 election and promising a smooth transition of power in the weeks after Trump lost. And now Donald Trump has found the guy he wants to be his next national security advisor, Republican Congressman Michael Waltz, who is more than ready to compete in the sycophant Olympics. Waltz co-sponsored a bill to rename Dulles International Airport after Donald Trump. He showed up outside Trump's criminal trial to defend the president's hush money arrangement with an adult film star. And Waltz worked with other election-denying Republicans to try and overturn the results of the 2020 election, leading his hometown paper to retract its endorsement of him. We had no idea, had no way of knowing at the time, that Waltz was not committed to democracy. So that's the man Donald Trump has picked to be his national security advisor, and he finds himself in rare company. Tonight, Trump announced that Fox News host Pete Hegseth is his choice to be the next Secretary of Defense. Prior to joining Fox News, Hegseth was an Army officer who served at Guantanamo. During the first Trump administration, Hegseth privately lobbied Trump to pardon 2 U.S. service members accused of war crimes, which Trump then did. He also has some questionable views on personal hygiene.
I don't think I've washed my hands for 10 years. Really, I don't really wash my hands ever.
Help me!
No, I inoculate myself. It's just not, germs are not a real thing. I can't see them, therefore they're not real.
Gross. Today, Trump also tapped 2 of his favorite cheerleaders, Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, to head his new Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, which is an internet pun I'm not going to bother explaining. Trump claims the new department will dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, and cut wasteful expenditures, all in the name of making government more efficient, because nothing says government efficiency like tapping 2 people to do 1 person's job. There's also Trump's nominee for ambassador to Israel, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee. When Huckabee ran for president in 2008, he reportedly told voters at one campaign event, "I have to be careful saying this because people get really upset. There's really no such thing as a Palestinian." That's been a political tool to try to force land away from Israel. All of this is part of Huckabee's worldview as an evangelical Christian Zionist. As Sarah Posner writes at MSNBC.com, for many Christian Zionists, and particularly for popular evangelists with significant clout within the Republican Party, their support for Israel is rooted in its role in the supposed end times. Jesus' return to earth, a bloody final battle at Armageddon, and Jesus ruling the world from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. In other words, for people like Mike Huckabee, supporting Israel is less about Jewish self-determination and more about using the Jewish people as a means to an end-times prophecy, one where all non-Christians face eternal punishment. That is who Donald Trump has chosen for his cabinet so far, and it has only been a week. Donald Trump has been on a tear over the past 72 hours, appointing loyalists, many of whom are entirely unqualified to key positions in his future cabinet. Marco Rubio is expected to be named Secretary of State. Elise Stefanik will be UN ambassador, and Fox News host Pete Hegseth will serve as Defense Secretary. Because he is Donald Trump, he has also been clear about who he is not choosing for key roles, posting on social media that Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo will not be invited to join his second administration. Joining me now is George Conway, who is a contributor for The Atlantic and a wealth of information and feelings about Donald Trump. First of all,
I'm speechless.
I mean, as we all are to a certain degree. we have some reporting that the vetting process or the sort of the deliberation process involves a lot of television. Here's what the war room at Mar-a-Lago, where these decisions are being made, contains multiple large television screens, which can be used to show multimedia about individual candidates or screen clips of their cable news appearances as needed. It's how you look on TV that gets you the job.
It's how you look on TV, but also how you suck up to the boss and tell the boss he's great and tell the boss how much he's persecuted and how wonderful he is. And that's the main purpose of the people surrounding Donald Trump. It's not to actually run anything, God forbid. It's to basically assuage his ego. And that's what this sequel, where, you know, the writers seem to have jumped the shark before we even got to the opening credits.
Pete Hegseth, George.
Yes.
A Fox News host.
Yeah.
A man with
Makes
a
you
very
want to wash your hands. I mean,
questionable history at Gitmo, a person who successfully got Trump to pardon war criminals.
Right.
I mean, this person's going to be the defense secretary. There is clearly no thought about how, potentially.
He wasn't even a weekday host on Fox and Friends.
He was a weekend host. But I mean, first of all, how long? I mean, the churn here, I would think, would be remarkable.
The churn is going to be remarkable. The churn always is remarkable. But there may be less churn for the following reason: is these people are not going to challenge him in any way.
Yeah.
Okay. There was churn in the first Trump administration because people would occasionally stand up to him or slow things down or take paper off his desk or say no to him. You know, like his White House counsel, Don McGahn, basically refused to commit a crime for him. And, you know, there are all sorts of instances where people were kind of resisting his stupidest urges because he's not very bright, doesn't know anything about how the government works. And they all treated him in the first administration. They understood that he didn't know anything. And they kind of treated him that way, and he got mad about it. And sooner or later, he'd fire the people and then claim that they were terrible. And then, you know, who hired those people, by the way? And then, you know, later, we didn't see very many of them supporting him in 2024. But somehow, he's back. And the people who are coming in this time are, you know, they're being vetted the way he wants to vet them, was by watching TV to see what they say about him. Makes perfect sense. It's perfect for a narcissist.
Now, Marco Rubio has certainly of late been in the camp of knee benders to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But he does have a past, a very distant past, of being a critic. And I wonder if you hold out any hope that he is in some way tethered to reality as the Secretary of State.
Well, look, I don't have the full opposition research file on Marco Rubio. I try not to pay too much attention to him. But, you know, he's been all over the place on all sorts of things. I mean, he was very, you know, anti-Russia at one point. Now he's like, let's sell out the Ukrainians. It's whatever. He will do whatever Trump wants. And now, you know, at least when you're in the Senate, it's kind of a cushy and secure job, relatively speaking. You don't have to run except every 6 years, and people say, oh, I'm a senator, and they follow you around, and they're respectful to you. It's like, that's not going to be true anymore. He's an employee at will. He'll be an employee at will now.
Yeah.
And that's not, you know, I mean, for a guy who, I mean, I don't know where he goes from here if he loses that job.
Well, perhaps it's his way of appeasing the MAGA right as he, you know, sharpens his tools for another potential, I don't know, presidential run in 2028. Who knows anything about anything that's happening
None of it,
there, right?
Right, exactly.
Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk being offered jobs in a fantasy football league.
A non-existent department, right.
The Department of Government Efficiency. Nothing has been more Orwellian in title. It doesn't actually exist.
Right.
Can they just can they bring it into existence by the sheer force of their own will? I mean, what do you think is the plan here?
First of all, it's not going to be a governmental department, as I understand it. And then, you know, there are actually rules and statutes that apply. I think the Federal Advisory Committee Act talks about, you know, regulates from an ethics standpoint people who are coming in and being consulted on how to run the government. And I mean, I'm not an expert in that, but we're going to end up knowing a lot more about it in the not too distant future, I think.
George, we're going to become experts in confirmation processes during Senate recesses. We're going to understand appropriations like never before, parliamentary procedure. It's going to be a whole big education for the American public. Good luck to us all. George Conway, thank you for your time and your credible disbelief at everything that's happening right now.